What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Fun show today. Great guest as always. We're going to talk remaining thoughts from the Iowa game, some more thoughts from Jim Leonhard's press conference, including a little bit more on tampering, Braelon Allen, Graham Mertz. Where are we at on that? Is the dust kind of settled? And then some basketball thoughts. Greg Gard had a press conference as well. Lots to get into today on Locked On Badgers, but we appreciate that you are here for the ride. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day as we continue to build up this community. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions to apply. We're going to bring on the always insightful Rajeev to the show. Rajeev, as always, man, you are most welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's do it. So I want to start here. I feel like there's still more to digest from the Iowa game, from Jim Leonhard's press conference, from the rumors about Braelon Allen to Graham Mertz's performance. And I want to kick it to you. I know you had some thoughts on all of that. So I'm going to kick it to you and see where you're at.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, right after the Iowa game, we're all kind of hyped up about what happened. And then, I watched JL's press conference later in the night and actually the next day. And it's, the tampering stuff is really interesting. And, I heard you talk about it on yesterday's show a little bit. And Scott, who's obviously a good guest of the show, and I were kind of chatting on Discord. He has a lot of good thoughts on it. But, in yesterday's show, you talked a lot about how, we got to remember that these guys, you can't really blame the players sometimes, right? I feel like that's a fair assessment. And the first thing that came to my mind is these guys are 19. Maybe he might even be 18, honestly. I'm not even sure if he's turned 19 yet. The guy, Braelon Allen is young. Graham Mertz is young. These guys are this entire industry of college football is built around, going out there and trying to convince kids to come play at your school, right? So we can't really be upset about the guys trying to look at other options that they have, right? And if we have to be serious about that, and we have to know that that's kind of what the transfer portal has done to the sport. So as upset as I was after the game and the uninspired performance, as I said multiple times during the show, I feel like you got to take a step back and realize that, this team went through a coaching change midseason, which, again, they're young kids. They're not really used to this kind of stuff. So they've got to get used to a new coach now. They've got to get used to a new offensive system, right? No longer Paul Chryst calling the plays. So there's a little bit of uncertainty as to what they're doing. And that, yeah, tampering happens, right? Tampering happens all over the place. So these guys are going to get those calls. They're going to be a part of that. And it was upsetting to kind of hear that. You can kind of tell from Jim's voice. Obviously, we're just inferring here. We're just guessing, but we don't know. But you could kind of tell that there's some of that stuff going on. But like you mentioned, on yesterday's show, it's incumbent on the university to do their part too, right? So this kind of goes back to the same discussion we've had a little bit before. Is it time to drop the interim tag? Would that help things? And I know that you're kind of the side of we don't need to do that right now. And I'm not saying we do, but it is a discussion point, right? Like if there wasn't the uncertainty about who the coach is going to be next year, does that create a little more stability in that situation? Are players more along the lines of, all right, well, Jim's going to be here, so I'm going to be here, like Braelon Allen said? But I think kind of my takeaway here is that we got to remember these guys are kids, and we have to remember that, our goal is to obviously get them to come here, and Wisconsin's going to have to go out and maybe find their own people in the transfer portal, right? It's not just about what the other guys are doing. It's about what we're doing too.
I love a lot of what you just said there. I want to actually hit on three different things that you said. The first is that they're kids, and that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. How are you as an 18-year-old, right? Like how whimsical. And by the way, we're not even pointing to anybody specifically, just in general, an 18, 19-year-old person. If you're going through struggles and it looks like there's a better opportunity potentially somewhere else, even if it's not, but someone comes along and says, hey, it's much better over here, and here's some money potentially. I would do that as a 39-year-old.
Yeah, totally.
So we do have to understand people work jobs and they look at different opportunities, right, that are potentially better or more money. That's no different for these players. I think we lose sight of that sometimes because we all fall in love with the jersey color. Like that's what we are. We're fans. But I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up that we have to remember. The other thing I would say, the Jim Leonard point, I think it's just a fascinating discussion because I think you're the crowd that says remove the interim tag. It'll calm the waters down. It'll reassure players. It'll help recruiting right now. That is 100% correct.
Yeah.
Right. It will do all those things. But then there's still this other crowd that's like, and this is kind of again where I fall, but I like the discussion where this team's not very good right now. Like calming these waters isn't the biggest deal. Saving this season isn't the biggest deal, right? Like Braelon Allen's here for 1 or 2 more years. Graham Mertz is here for another year. This recruiting class isn't going to make or break the program, but the coach will. So, you need to take the utmost prudence and the utmost diligence in finding for sure the right guy. See who might apply, and that's kind of where I'm at. But you're not wrong. Like removing that interim tag solves a lot of these immediate issues, right? And it kind of depends on what you weigh more.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of that argument. I really can. I can see it. And I feel like I fall in the middle and a little bit leaning on the side of getting rid of the interim tag. And I'm not one of these guys banging the drum for it. I'm just saying, like, look, the guy's been here for several years running a fantastic defense, a defense that even killed it again this weekend against Iowa. So I guess here's where I'm at on this. I expect Jim Leonard to be the coach next year. I think you expect Jim Leonard to be the coach next year. If Jim Leonard is the coach next year, I'm going to look back and be like, man, I wish we would have just gotten rid of the interim tag, right?
Sure.
But then again, I can also see the side of it that says, look, like, let's do a search. Let's make sure we got the right guy. Let's make sure there's not someone that comes out of the woodwork that would be better for the program, that would take it to the next level. So I can really see both sides of that argument. And it's a good discussion to have. And it's something where people are going to be on either side. And I think as long as you can kind of reason with it, it makes sense. But I wonder, are these tampering calls coming in? Are this not the calls, but are our players like I think his quote was in the press conference, I have to recruit my players every day, right? I think that's what he said. And I mean, is that happening as much if that interim tag's gone? I mean,
I think you're dead right. If that interim tag's gone, it's not happening as much right now. Wisconsin is a sinking ship in just in the terms of the college football landscape, right? And I use that reference because there's sharks circling, right? There's blood in the water. It's a wounded animal right now. So clearly teams are going to be more apt to come in and say star player X, star player Y. Your coach, you have an interim coach. This guy's been fired. You might not be bowl eligible this year. Like, come check out what we're doing. So absolutely. Again, I just think though, and I can see both argument sides as well. So I like that we're able to really see both sides of this. I think that's healthy. I still think from the big picture, you need to wait to see who potentially might come out of the woodwork. You have to interview a couple people. And I've said it before, like I love Jim Leonard. I think he's going to be the coach. I think he has a fantastic ceiling. But a guy like Dave Leonard checks all the defensive coordinator boxes that Jim Leonard has.
You mean Dave Aranda?
Or Dave Aranda. Yeah. Sorry, did I say Dave Leonard?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can get them both melded together. But, Dave Aranda checks those same types of defensive coordinator boxes. Yeah. But he's also been a head coach. Plus, he has SEC recruiting experience, right? Like, it bears checking out is what I'm saying. And who knows who else might come out of the woodwork. So that's where I'm at. But I think you're 100% correct that people are more apt to tamper when, there's chaos.
And the one thing that I also wanted to say about kind of like the tampering and the transfer portal a little bit, I feel like, we have to be really diligent about when that portal opens up, we got to go out there and get our players too. Like there are people that are going to come to Wisconsin and try to get like the Michigans of the world, the Penn States, the Ohio States, the SEC schools that, let's face it, they're an echelon above Wisconsin. They're going to try to come get our players. And those players have to decide, okay, am I going to get playing time at that school, or am I going to be convinced? Like, yeah, Mike Hart can come and say, hey, come run at Wisconsin, BA, or come and run at Michigan. I'm sorry. But, and that might be a sexy, attractive thing, but he's got to decide if he's going to get playing time. But at the same time, we have to look at where we can go to, right? There are other schools in the Big Ten that are not in our echelon that have good players, like schools like Purdue, schools like Illinois. They've got good players. We need to go and look at those schools and say, do you want to elevate into a Wisconsin program, or go to the bigger schools like a Michigan, like a Penn State, like an Ohio State, and go to the guys who maybe we even recruited or tried to recruit and they're not getting playing time there, right? And they're like, hey, now you come to Wisconsin and you can compete here and have a better chance to play. So I really am interested to see what we do in the transfer portal, and not to say that we're tampering now, but what are we going to do when that time comes up, and how are we going to evolve and, try to bring in those players that we're probably going to lose, right? We got to replace that.
Yeah, I've said it before. I think Wisconsin is much more of a have than a have not in the college football landscape, right? I mean, it's not, to your point, it's not the apex predator, but it's very much better than 90% of college football programs. And
I mean, we're in the top 5 or top 10 in wins over the last 10 years. I mean, like, absolutely we are. I mean, we even though we're the 3-star, 4-star guys that we're developing, but we have the wins to prove it.
Yep. And to your point there, and to kind of what I was saying, this shift in paradigm in college football, Wisconsin fans shouldn't be so scared of it. Like, it actually should benefit Wisconsin more than it hurts Wisconsin.
If we take advantage of it, and if we get the right recruiting staff to do it.
For sure. Because for every elite player we maybe lose, we should be able to rip away 2 or 3 players from you mentioned Big Ten schools, but even, a Wake Forest, a North Carolina, maybe not North Carolina, but North Carolina, quite frankly,
we got them.
Texas Tech, like all these schools, like Wisconsin's a higher tier than all those schools, for Pete's sake. So I'm interested 100% to see what happens. We're going to kind of get into some of that next, because we're going to talk about specifically the offensive staff, but kind of in general, just the philosophy of Wisconsin and where we think it needs to go. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers with Rajeev. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. And these days, we've talked about it. Every hire just feels like a high stakes wager for your small business. It's tough to find good people, and sometimes it's hard to get rid of the bad ones. So you have to hit where you're hiring new people onto your team. And that's where LinkedIn really comes in. You have to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's where LinkedIn, once again, comes in. They have free tools, screening tools, to make sure that you're getting the right people into your interviews. They're not wasting their time. You're not wasting your time. It's win-win. And simple interview skill questions as well to help you prepare for your interview. So you're asking the right type of questions to get the right types of people into your business, into your program. And it's why small businesses rate and continue to rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. I want to thank everybody tuning into Locked On Badgers. As always, one of your first listens every day, your team every single day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Sports Today. All the biggest sports news stories in one spot, like only the Locked On Network can deliver. Wherever you get podcasts, also available on YouTube. And let's get Rajeev back on. Let's continue chopping this up. One of the things that we've been talking about this entire year is Jim Leonhard auditioning for the job. Well, not entire year, but since the interim tag happened, right? Auditioning for the job. But low-key, and we talked about a little bit, all the coaches are auditioning. All of them are. And it kind of feels like Iowa was the last hurrah in the Bobby Engram audition reel. And I'm not rooting for anybody to lose jobs. I'm just not. But we also have to be realistic here. I think I was done after that game for sure. And I'm curious where you're at on Bobby Engram.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's been difficult because I wanted, as we all did, I wanted to see Bobby Engram just flourish after Jim Leonhard took over, right? I wanted to see him, as we can say, like, take the shackles off that maybe Paul Chryst had on him and really just sort of explode in different play calling and things like that. We've seen some nice plays from him in the Northwestern game, the Purdue game, but overall, yeah, I mean, where I'm at on this is this, like, I feel like, when Barry Alvarez got to this program in the 90s, Wisconsin was the Big Ten doormat, right? I mean, that's where Wisconsin was for many years. And he evolved this program into what it is now. I mean, that's why there's a statue of him outside of Camp Randall Stadium. He is the godfather of this program and what we've built. And throughout that time, we've pretty much had a ceiling of, we've won several Big Ten championships. We've been sort of on the outside looking in a couple times for the college football playoff in recent years. And I feel like that's been super successful. We've had more wins than most teams in the last 10 years, no doubt about that. But where I think of this Wisconsin program going next, I want that next step to be taken, right? I feel like it's time for us to evolve again to the point where we can compete with the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Georgias. There's no reason we can't. Are we there yet? Of course not, but we can. based on the fact that look how many wins we've logged up over the last few years. We can do it, but it's that extra step. So I feel like, and we've said it before, we need a new offensive culture, right? A totally new offensive scheme. Now, look, I've said many times that the power run has to be a part of that because that's what built our program. It's that toughness, that great O-line play, that power run play. But schools like Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, they all have that power run game too. But they all have dynamic offenses that have RPO elements to them that throw the ball down the field, that mix it up and different formations and spreads all over the place. I'm not saying we need to go be at Purdue that just spreads it out every play. I don't want that. I want that power run game, but it's time to take that next step. So when I look at Bobby Engram and what I've seen so far, yeah, I mean, I want to see a different vision from Jim Leonhard, and I hope that vision means a new offense completely. Because look, he doesn't know that side of the ball very well. Obviously, he knows defense. He's done it for years. That side of the ball is good. He brought. I mean, who was it? Was it Aranda that brought in the 3-4? I think that was him, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, that 3-4 defense has been so successful for us, and I love it. I love a 3-4 defense. But so keep the parts that are good, and let's evolve the parts that need changing because we can take the next step. But I think it's time for a totally new offensive culture.
I like it. I like a lot of what is going on here. Yeah, I agree. And if you go back, I would say 10, 11 years, LSU, Alabama, they were playing 9-6 slugfests.
Yeah.
Murder ball, full of every defensive lineman was an NFL player. Every running back got 25 carries. The quarterbacks were game managers, right? And they both evolved, right? They both realized we can't win just by doing the same old slugfest, and they both won national titles since then.
Yeah.
Not just by evolving their offense. They also have incredibly elite skill talent, but they did make a conscious choice that we have to change. Like we can't just continue playing 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah, I mean, when you have guys like Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase, I mean, you're going to win national titles.
Makes it easier, right? But you don't get those guys if you're running 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Like you have to kind of set the environment before those players come and flourish. And the other thing where I'm at with Engram, I've been kind of wishy-washy with him, right? Like we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Because Mertz got better. I think he's been better under Engram. I think the play calling has gotten a little better, and I've cut him some slack. But I'm at the point now where one of the biggest issues with Paul Chryst and his hires, in my opinion, was none of these guys had experience doing what they're doing. And if we're going to go with Jim Leonhard, who's a younger coach and doesn't have an offensive feel, we have to get somebody with a track record.
Yes.
Like we can't take the risk that Ingram's the guy, right? We take too many risks on coaches. Like we think Al Johnson can be the guy, and sure, Herring can probably coach tight ends. And yeah, why not Bobby Engram quarterbacks, right? Good coaches can figure it out. Well, we can also just hire coaches who have already figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we have to do on the offensive side.
Yeah, and hiring an offensive coordinator who has a proven system that maybe done it at a lower level school, maybe done it at a different, not a Wisconsin style, but they can bring their offense here and bring coaches, right? I mean, bring a running backs coach, bring a tight ends coach, and then Jim Leonhard's got to go out and we got to look at special teams. We got to really evolve the things that need it. And yeah, I agree. I mean, and because we've seen the Wisconsin offense for a long time. We've watched every play I've watched every play since 1999. And I just feel like we've seen a lot of the same things. So we have to take that next step. And you're right. It includes the other coaches too. It includes everything. And it's a philosophy that starts from the top, right? So if Jim Leonhard can kind of, find out what his vision is, find an offensive coordinator that has that philosophy, let that trickle all the way down, including into the recruiting department. Because if we're going to have an offensive philosophy, we also have to have the pieces that go with it, right? We've got to be able to recruit the people that make sense for the program. And like what we said earlier, like you just mentioned about like the LSU guys, if we're going to have a new philosophy that is going to throw the ball a little more, then we can actually attract some of these better receivers and more skill position talent. But it's got to all be a, pyramid driven. It's got to start at the top. It's got to go down, and everyone's got to be on the same page so that everything from play calling and offensive philosophy down to recruiting and the players, everything melds together, which is what we need to do to take that next step, which we haven't done for several years. And it's time to take that step.
Yeah, it's been so chaotic, right? The last several years. I think the word that keeps popping in my head is purposeful. Like there has to be a very purposeful vision for this. And recently we haven't had any of that. Like it's all been just musical chairs. Let's put this guy here and shift this guy here. And none of it's working, which honestly shouldn't be surprising. Like you didn't. Yeah. So we're on the same page there. Really, whether it's Jim Leonhard or not, I think you're going to see an offensive shakedown, and the offense is going to be rebuilt in a different way.
And rebuild is the right word. I mean, it's kind of a bad word in sports, right? Rebuild, but we do need that. We do need to kind of rebuild our offense, and we got to figure out what pieces are working, what pieces aren't working. And yeah, I mean, let's face it, that's what we're going to have to do, and that's why, because it's going to take time. It's not like we're going to be amazing next year. It's going to be about, because it's philosophy, it's recruiting, players, everything. It's all got to go in one in order for it to really work.
I'm going to finish on this because I want to get into some of Greg Gard's press conference too. I think he said some really interesting things, but one of the things that the other reason I kind of go back to this, and maybe it makes sense that, excuse me, Jim Leonhard, the interim take, is still there. It's difficult for me to think that he could put together what he wants for an offensive vision and who he's targeting in the middle of a season while he's trying to turn this around.
Yeah.
And Chris McIntosh needs to see what that vision is. And if I'm Chris McIntosh, it's kind of unfair for me to expect to, excuse me, Jim Leonhard in between games to be like, all right, this is what I want to run. This is what I'm targeting. Like that's an off-season question, but that's a question that needs to be answered before you hire Jim Leonhard.
You're right. You're absolutely right. That is, because you're right. I mean, he has to show Chris that vision, and everyone's got to be on board with it. You're right. I mean, that is a big factor.
All right, I think we're on the same page here with kind of the offense and what needs to change going forward. Coming up, we got Greg Gard's press conference. That team is 2-0. Tons of excitement. I think he said some interesting things. We're going to get into it next on Locked On Badgers with Rajeev. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs information. Wisconsin opened -13 against Nebraska this weekend. That number seems high until you've seen what Nebraska's done recently. Casey Thompson is hurt. Still, if you're not trusting Wisconsin, quite frankly, why would you right now? Go to BetOnline. You can lay a little bit of money on Nebraska. I would never do it because I never in my life have bet against Wisconsin, even when I know for sure I would make money off it. I just can't do it. But if you're economical, you want to make some money, could do it there. BetOnline also has you covered for all your other sports: golf, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, esports, ultimate fighting. It's all there, plus live casino games. Futures betting, live in-game betting. A lot of sports going on right now. If you have a good feel on NBA, NFL, who's going to win the Super Bowl, NBA Finals, great time to get in on some futures betting. Do it responsibly, as always. Head to the website, use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. If you enjoy the show, you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It's a great way to support us. And just as we continue to build the Badger community, that helps us bump up in the YouTube algorithms, the chats, all that stuff helps. Leave some comments below if you have some thoughts on Bobby Engram, if you're not done with him, and on the transfer portal. What are your thoughts there? Do you like it, dislike it? Do you disagree with players looking around in the middle of the season, or do you think it's just part of the new normal? Leave those comments below. We'll definitely get into them. We always bring the comments back up on future shows. Let's get Rajeev back in. Basketball time. The team that's performing well, that has us excited.
The exciting Wisconsin team.
let's talk Greg Gard's press conference. I thought he had some interesting things to say. We each have a couple things that we were going to bring up. I'm going to start here with, he brought up, I forget who asked the question. I think it was Abby, asked about Connor Esigan going in a little early because of Max Klesman's fouls and how he handled it. And you could tell Greg Gard's kind of a reserved dude. He's not bombastic like John Calipari or some other guys. But Gard's like, yeah, he's got some swagger, especially offensively. Right.
I mean, listen, and Justin's going to love this topic because he absolutely loves the season. But yeah, and he does, and he does have swagger, and it's nice to see that because you don't often see freshmen coming in and having that swagger. You see them a little more timid with their shot. You see them a little more reserved. They're not really sure what they're doing out there. He doesn't care. He's like, I'm going to fire these threes because I know I'm a good shooter and I have it. And it's nice to see that. Now he's got to keep getting better. He's got to, take good shots. He's got to make sure he's fitting well in the offense. He's got to play defense too. There's a lot of parts of the game that he's got to excel at, but Greg Gard's right. He's got that swagger. We've seen that swagger in 2 games. Where is that swagger going to be 10 games from now? Right. Where is the 3-point percentage going to be 10 games from now? I hope it's 45%, but we just, it's nice to see a freshman that's got this kind of swagger coming in, this kind of hype, and he's delivering. It's, we've talked about him a lot, especially on this channel, but he's doing what we want him to do. He's not afraid to shoot, and he's taking risks.
The other thing really quick on Asijan, and we're not going to spend, I promise we're not going to spend the entire basketball segment on Connor. The runaway hype train is already going, despite Rajeev's best efforts to put brakes on it. I'm kidding. But the other thing that Gard mentioned, he said he's tougher than I thought he was, which I think was a great compliment from a coach.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree. And I think that's kind of shown in what he's done so far. It's that you can tell that he's tough because he's not afraid. And that says a lot 2 games into a college career.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you want to go?
Yeah, so I thought that a couple interesting things were the rotation. He was asked a lot about, I think the question was, when do you start making changes to the rotation, right? And he said that he's going to have to go deeper into the season because he's got a deep bench. He said he's got to give Ilmer more time. He's got to give McGee more time. He even mentioned giving Hodges more time, which I really like because I really think that Hodges is an important player. And, typically by the time, you get 4 or 5 games in, you've really seen that rotation kind of cut down. And I agree with what he's saying, and I can see it. We have a pretty deep bench right now that guys we haven't even seen. I mean, I think we went 11 this past game, but there are people that need that playing time. And I think that especially now that we're playing GB tomorrow. I mean, we know that McGee's going to get some time, but I feel like, these guys, McGee could really be super strong. Ilver could be super strong. Hodges maybe or maybe not, but it's interesting to see that we're going to go deeper into the season with that rotation. And I like it because it gives players more time to really show what they can do. Maybe someone who we haven't even really seen yet. Maybe Ilver comes out and is all of a sudden going to be 7th guy in, right? We don't know. I mean, it's like but I like giving these guys a chance because they've worked hard. Now's the time to really see it. And I think that the main thing is that it shows is that clearly we have a deeper team than we've had in the past. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, last year's team was so bench troubled, right? If anybody got hurt or if anybody got in foul trouble, there was nobody coming off the bench that was giving you much of anything, especially when Carter Gilmore kind of fell out of rotation.
Right.
I kind of have a devil's advocate thing here, and I'm curious your thoughts on it because I've actually said the same thing. I think we're deeper. I like some of the pieces, but we also don't really know, right? Because Ilver might just not be ready. Mark McGee might. Ilver didn't play last year, and we had nobody off the bench. That's a red flag, a little bit of one. And he hasn't gotten in much this year. Neath has some offensive weirdness. Kamari McGee barely played last game. I don't know. Maybe Isaac Lindsay, I don't think that's a guy you're really going to trust a ton. Carter Gilmore has performed really poorly offensively. Hodges is kind of an undersized, underskilled big. These are all my pessimistic takes if I'm looking at the floor of all these players. But as this goes on, it might not be that we have an abundance of good options coming off the bench. It might be that we have a dearth of good options coming off the bench, and that's why Gard needs to keep going deeper to find the few pieces that work.
Yeah, very true. And I think call it just, early season optimism for me, right? I want to believe that we have a really deep team. So you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, we could have a situation where he's like searching for people to bring in, but at the beginning of every year, hey, great, we're 2-0. We've got to be excited about it, right? We've got to say that our team has a chance to really do something. But it's not only that, it's optimism, but we've seen it. We've seen some signs. We've seen some signs that the team goes a little deeper this year, that we can't be relying on a guy like Johnny Davis because we don't have a guy like Johnny Davis now. And we don't have that 5-year Brad Davison player. So people have to step up. And I like that. That was the thing coming into the season. I said what I was most excited about was who was going to step up, right? Mm-hmm. Because someone's got to do it. Someone's got to be the person to do that. And I would like to think that because of how deep the team could be, we've got a couple of different players that are really going to step up and really potentially permanently deepen that rotation a little bit for the whole year. I mean, what if we were a 9, 10 deep team the whole season? I'm not saying we're going to be that. I'm just saying, we have players that could do that. And will they take the opportunity now to step up, show Greg Gard what they have, and actually make their way into this team?
I think it's possible. I was taking a very negative look at it, but I definitely think we're deeper than last year.
Yeah.
Again, that is a very low bar. I mean, you could roll over that bar. Like,
Right.
so I think we're definitely deeper than last year. I need to see a little bit more from some of the other pieces to say this is a really deep team. But yeah, we're absolutely deeper than last year, and we're more balanced in the starting lineup as well, which I really like. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. And I have a good kind of a fun announcement for everybody watching the show. We're gonna try to get Rajeev on more for all the Rajeev fans out there, which is a lot actually. We're going to try to get him on once a week. We've kind of been working some stuff behind the scenes, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Also writing at Badger Notes now, Rajeev, really getting out there, and he's incredibly smart and sharp, so we're all smarter because of it.
Well, I think it has to be said that, you helping to build this community, like you've said many times, is the reason that I've been able to join, which has been super fun for me, but, really testament to Locked On Badgers and what you guys have done. Because, I mean, you're building the community like you've always wanted, and I think you're doing a great job. So credit to you.
I appreciate it, man. Again, the credit really goes to everybody in the community, from yourself, Scott, Justin, Mike, everyone else. And we're doing it together. We're going to do continue building it. More on coming up, a lot more on football coming up this week. We got Jason Jordan basketball recruiting coming up. So a lot of stuff dropping this week on Locked On Badgers. As always, really appreciate everybody tuning in. Always appreciate Rajeev dropping in. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Sports Today. All the biggest stories of the day on Locked On Sports, wherever you get your podcasts. With that, on Wisconsin, and we'll talk to you later.